If I can get you green, make you more efficient, and save you money, you're going to be happy.
Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to your podcast, the show where we know burning fossil fuels is like so 95. It's so out, it's just beyond. It might as well be in the Kuiper Belt. It's so out. Yet, for most remote communities around the world, using diesel generators for electricity is still in. It's still the norm. So on today's show, we'll explore how one company is weaning these type of communities off diesel fuel with an emerging new type of battery that also doesn't require mining for lithium. If you think blood diamonds are something to be avoided, have a look at lithium mining and the horrors it involves. But that's a topic for another show. Speaking of horror stories, I know how easy it is to get caught up in the doom and gloom of our age. It seems like life as an Earthling has never been as bad. Wars, escalating political tensions, wave after wave of COVID variants, all with this looming climate crisis. I mean, just to name a few. So, it just always feels like we're on the brink of disaster and we're never going to come back from it. This has us, clicking on news items and doom scrolling through the late stage capitalism subreddit. And it's not good for our mental outlook. Believe me, I've been there. So that's why we created Earthlings 2.0. It's a place where we can imagine better versions of ourselves. A place where we can amplify the great work average people are doing around the world and help them share their knowledge with us so that, we can be more intentional about the timeline we live on. Do we want a Mad Max world or do we want a Star Trek world? Frankly, I will take replicators beaming down to planets and currency not existing. To accomplish this, Earthlings 2.0 is produced by a small group of passionate individuals that share this same vision, and we want to use our skills and talents in storytelling and broadcasting to contribute to a better future. Which is why, here it comes, we invite you to become a member of our Patreon. We're planning on launching some exclusive content for members, and for only $5 a month, you can become a part of our growing community of changemakers. In fact, for the first person that becomes our Patreon member, I will send you a free t-shirt. How do you like that? I've got this t-shirt that I've been designing. I'm super excited about it, and I will send you one if you help break the ice on our Patreon page. And if you're not in a position to do that right now, it's completely okay. You can support our show by leaving us a review on your podcast app, and that's going to help other Earthlings like you find the show and get some hope for the future that they're longing for. What do the Atlantic island of Tristan da Cunha, Egypt's Siwa Oasis, and the Grise Ford in Canada have in common? They and hundreds of other towns around the world are very likely running their electrical grids on diesel generators. Globally, over 600 million Earthlings live in these remote communities that are not connected to their national grids. In Canada, that's roughly 200,000 Earthlings using diesel for fuel. On top of this, in Australia, 30% of the country's conventional power generation is diesel powered. Now, 70 years ago, running a town on diesel was a practical solution. It was a time when renewable energy and storage didn't exist the way they do today, and there were a lot of pros for diesel generators. But there's a lot of cons too. They produce numerous toxic byproducts like benzene and arsenic and formaldehyde, not to mention the carbon emissions and the potential diesel spills. Plus, there's the high costs of diesel fuel that just keeps going up for these towns that are already facing high prices for everything else because everything has to be shipped or flown in. And then, of course, the diesel has to be shipped and flown in, so that has its own fuel costs and its own emissions. You can see where I'm going with this. There has to be a better way. And that's why on today's show, we're talking to somebody who's actively working in Alaska to transition that state's remote towns off diesel using a more advanced form of battery storage. It's a technology that stores energy electrostatically, not chemically, like lithium ion. And it's showing a lot of promise. Our guide on this away mission is Marty Snyder. He's the president and CEO of SuperCapicitor Energy, and he has a long career supporting the telecommunications industry to power their remote locations. And in his latest venture, he's parlaying that knowledge into powering all types of locations that are too isolated to connect directly to the power grid.
Well, right now, if you're a remote community, and this really goes for just about anywhere in the world, islands, Majorca, Alaska, South America, all over, communities have their own power plants, and those power plants are most commonly diesel generators. Diesel is very commonly available internationally. It's an efficient way to make energy, and that's how most villages create power.
So in these situations, these communities haven't, maybe they didn't need enough power to justify maybe a centralized energy plant on some other type of fossil fuel like natural gas or coal, and so they instead use diesel generators to power their communities.
Coal is very bulky to transport. Coal has a high energy coefficient, so for the amount of mass that's there, it actually is a decent source of energy. But we all know the drawbacks of coal.
So using diesel generators to power entire communities, it at the time when that was really the only thing that was the best solution at the time for the available technology, right?
Yeah.
But what sort of challenges are these communities facing now?
Well, rising cost of fuel is a big one, and communities' power demands are going up. And so, along with the rising costs, they require more. And then when you have that kind of infrastructure, you have a embedded maintenance cost.
These generators have a lot of maintenance the older they get.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a gas engine. Just think about your car. Runs great for the first couple of years. And then you start seeing, hearing sound and stuff like that. Yeah. So, that's yeah, very common, especially if you're running around the clock. I mean, think about your car, right?
Hmm.
You're not driving your car 24/7. These generators are running 24/7. They are getting used. So it's a big deal.
Hmm. Are they more efficient if you just keep running them all the time versus stopping and starting?
That's a double-edged sword. Stopping and starting can be hard on machinery, but by the same token, it depends on what that interval or that cycle is. It's not
Hmm.
hard on your car to drive your car to work and then park it, and it sits for, whatever, 8 hours, and then you get in it and you drive home. It sits overnight. That's not what I would call excessive wear.
Hmm.
Driving your car for the whole time you were at work or 24 hours would be obviously much more wear. Engines don't like to be started and stop frequently, and that does have a negative impact on wear. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, because I think people hear the concept that there's still communities around the world that are using diesel fuel for their energy. I think people are often shocked because it seems like an inefficient use of that resource, and it seems like there's better things, better solutions out there that people could be using. Why haven't we seen more of these remote communities switching over to better solutions besides diesel?
This gets into sort of the storage story, but the simple answer to your question is people are, switching over when you have an embedded piece of infrastructure. that switch is expensive.
Hmm.
And renewables are new, generally speaking. I mean, got I joined the Solar Energy Society in 1979. But I mean, that was from the whole Earth catalog,
That's
This
right.
wasn't the world, of
There's more beards and Birkenstocks at those conferences back in the day.
yeah, beards and Birkenstocks, exactly. Yeah, so people aren't, switching your energy infrastructure, it's a big deal. It's expensive. And up until now, in this point in time in history, storage has not been a great solution. The standard storage options out there just aren't great. They're expensive. They're just as awful as the fuel.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me a little bit more about what options have been available in the past and why they haven't been useful.
The original batteries, the technology hasn't really changed in a couple hundred years. You have two chemicals or a metal and a liquid, and they're exchanging ions in a chemical reaction to charge and then the opposite reaction to discharge. And that's the same technology that's in the starter battery of everybody's car. Those original battery storage products, they don't offer a lot. And the reason they don't is because they have a limited cycle life. So you get to use it, you get to do that cycle, that chemical reaction, going back and forth. You can only do that so many times. And then the materials, the chemicals you're working with, they just start to build up crust, dendrites. There's other names for it, and crystals, and they just break down.
Yeah, and also a lot of these batteries would require a lot of maintenance, or they're just incredibly expensive. Like lithium ion batteries are still pretty expensive depending on what size you're going for. And if we're talking about these remote communities, like you need a lot of power. How much, like in a like range, like how much power does a your standard remote community typically use?
Well, there isn't a standard because we've
Hmm.
looked at dozens, we've worked on dozens, and it ranges anywhere from a community of, say, 50 people to we've
Hmm.
done a remote community where the population count said there was 8,000, and they had their own diesel generators to
Wow.
support that. Um, and then everywhere in between. So loads, vary quite a bit. So size, it can be, petite to extra large.
Your company, SuperCap Energy, is bringing a rather unique type of energy storage to these remote
Yeah.
communities, which is how you and I met and started talking. So, what is your battery technology?
Well, a supercapacitor it's really a hybrid. It's a cross between a capacitor and a battery, and it really borrows the technology of both. Um, Capacitors have been also around for hundreds of years. Ben Franklin and the key, that was a capacitor in essence, And so capacitors store charges of energy electrostatically. It's not a chemical reaction going on. We actually have electrons that we're storing, but because of the nature of electricity, the nature of materials, we need materials to store it in. The amount of storage you get in, say, a kilogram or an amount you could hold in your hand is really very small. And but capacitors are really valuable. They're used everywhere. For example, the electronic ignition of your car are capacitors. Everybody's refrigerator has a capacitor. That's because when the motor starts, after it's been off, it's cool, but then it's starting to warm up, so the compressor
Hmm.
comes on. That extra oomph of energy required to start the motor can be too much to pull from the through the plug, plugged into the wall. So they have a capacitor there, and capacitors have this great quality. They can discharge a ton of energy really, really fast. So they help start the motor, and then they recharge, while that thing's running. the other great quality of a capacitor is you can cycle them millions of times. Now, if we could just have a battery, that worked like that, unfortunately, the energy storage density is really, really low. So batteries have high energy density, but you can't cycle them. You only get so much life. So a hybrid supercapacitor is a combination of the both. We have an anode and we have a cathode. The anode is the negative side, the cathode is the positive side. And the anode is a battery technology and does have an electrochemical component to it, but the cathode is a capacitor. And it's not just any capacitor, it's actually a special kind of a capacitor that's been developed over the last probably about 25 years, which started with General Electric and another big name company called Eaton, and they're developing these better capacitors, bigger capacitors, that kind of thing, until some universities, one of them being the University of Texas in Austin, helped to create this technology. Well, what if we combine the both? We can get more cycles, like a capacitor, but better density, like a battery. It's not the awesome of each one, but it's a really good compromise. So with our capacitors that we're selling, we have a 20,000 cycle life.
Wow.
And if you just divide that by 365 days, you get 54 years. So if we can cycle those every day for 54 years, now we have a solution that it's better.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, because if you're going to go through all that effort of making the switch over from your fossil fueled solution to something that's more renewable, you don't want to have to buy new equipment every 10 years.
And you're right, when you talk about the cost of swapping out batteries or storage, it can be very pricey. So that's why these kinds of solutions weren't really available a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it's being adopted. It's being really well tested. We have systems in place, and they're running like they're brand new. And if it were a battery, it wouldn't be that way. You have noticeable degradation in that amount of time.
What type of battery are you thinking would have noticeable degradation in that amount of time?
Anything from a lead acid, and then even lithium ion, and those are really good batteries, but you can't cycle them that deep, that long.
Not if you want to keep your warranty.
That's right.
I mean, so you mentioned like the rapid charging and discharging and the high cycle life. What about energy density? Where does your SuperCap energy storage solution fit in with some of the other existing offerings?
Well, we're in the middle, high quality lithium, and I would give that to Tesla. They have an energy density of about 250 watts per kilogram.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the number, 250. We'll use that number. A high quality lead acid battery, which they still use in solar systems, is about 29 watts per kilogram. So 29, 250. A supercapacitor is right around 140. So we're, more than halfway to the lithium stuff, and a lifetime they'll live past you and me. We'll be dead. So I think that's a good place to be right now.
Yeah, and also your battery, what I found really interesting was that it has this really wide temperature range for operating.
Well, wider, yeah. The lithium batteries do pretty good. The challenge, and we face some of the same challenges that a lithium battery does. Although we have a special way to manufacture, it's lower density. Like for example, I have a 70 watt per kilogram battery that I can charge at negative 40 Celsius. By the way, negative 40 Celsius is also negative 40 Fahrenheit.
Fun
Fun fact.
fact, I did not know that.
They cross right there. Their lines cross at neg 40. So yeah, so we have one that does that now. Now we have a regular offering, the 140 watt per kilogram. We can charge it at 0 Celsius, i.e., that's 32 degrees. But for most of the needs, that's not really a problem. In fact, we have customers who think they need that negative 40. They're more expensive. So when they see the price tag, they go, well, how could we use the other one? So we have a solution, necessity being the mother of invention. Uh, we have a little heating pad. We can fix that.
Some of these remote communities that are using diesel for their local grid are in places like you mentioned, like Alaska,
Right.
where it does get very cold. So, and I know you're doing some projects up there with some
Mhm.
remote communities. Why is your technology well suited for these communities, and what are you doing up there?
A community needs electricity 24/7. If someone wakes up in the middle of the night, they need to be able to turn a light on. That doesn't mean they're using the power that's being generated. So that generator runs and the energy is being burned, the fuel is being burned, but no one's using the fuel.
Yep.
So the reason we store it is we run the generator and we capture all the energy we can capture from burning that fuel. So we're maximizing the energy in the fuel. That's the important thing. And then we store what the stuff that isn't being used, someone's light's not on or whatever, we store. And once our storage container is full, then we turn the generator off. And now the community doesn't lose, they still have power. They pull it when they need it out of that storage. It doesn't go anywhere. And we are maximizing the efficiency of that fuel. So the amount saved is dramatic. We've done analysis, which we've done for multiple, like for you mentioned Alaska, multiple communities in Alaska. We've done this as other projects we have too. And we're saving at a minimum of 65% of their fuel.
Wow.
And if you got $1 million fuel bill a year, that's $650,000 for a system that you might pay $2 million for. Well, that's got a payback time of 3 years. I know a lot of CFOs that'll say, "I'll take that bet any day of the week." That's a better investment. I just pulling it roughly off the top of my head, that's about a 28% ROI.
Mhm.
And you're not investing money anywhere in the world today and getting a 28% return. That's an impressive return.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're using the diesel fuel more efficiently, then would the communities purchase less diesel annually?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then is there an opportunity for them to also install some solar panels or some wind generation and start generating?
Absolutely.
And so this is what, got me so interested in what you guys are doing because you're able to provide an energy storage solution that is somewhat in like the Goldilocks zone of energy density and like it's got this huge cycle life, so it's great for some like long lasting applications and the um, the 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 operating temperature is wider and it's modular. So like this is what got my attention around because I was thinking about it for these remote communities that you're working on, which are all over the world where we ship all this
Hmm.
fuel everywhere. And of course, shipping the fuel also generates a lot of carbon emissions,
Oh my
right? So
gosh.
it's like double
Yeah.
the carbon emissions if you're using diesel for your electrical grid. But then also there's all these other applications that this would be applicable for. And in fact, your company SuperCap Energy started not with remote communities, but with telecommunications, right?
That's exactly right.
Tell us about some of the other applications that you guys are using these batteries for.
The biggest users traditionally have been the phone company.
And why is that?
Well, so phone systems are considered, since Alexander Graham Bell invented it, have been considered critical infrastructure. And now we have hundreds of thousands of cell sites around the country. The Congress legislated 911 requirements for mobile operators too. And that made a wireless site now became life-saving. It had to be there. And so they can't go down. They just can't go down, and so all cell sites, all phone companies, like that building is 80% batteries.
Wow.
People don't even realize it. And there's no windows. They're filled with batteries, and that's so because if the grid goes down, the phone system cannot. And so that's one application. The next big application for storage, I think, is residential. It's commercial and residential, solar, renewable kind of systems.
Resilience.
Yeah, and so you can use that solar you put on your roof at after 5 o'clock, when the sun goes down, which, by the way, is also when the utility charges you the most.
Yeah, that's right.
But the utilities see the advantage of it for the same reason. There's an interesting thing with the utility that they can now do with storage, as long as it's storage that has the qualities of capacitors.
What would that be?
So there's this thing called spinning reserve and the spot market for energy. And in order for the electric utility to maintain the frequency on the grid at 60 hertz, they have to put energy on the grid as it's being taken off. People do not give the electric utility the credit they deserve. That is enormous, almost impossible task. And in order to accomplish it today, traditionally, the technique has been what we call spinning reserve. So those are big power plants. These are billion-dollar power plants that are always producing electricity, whether we need it or not.
Yep.
Just like the village in Alaska has to run that Jenny at night, well, guess what? The power company does too. Only they burn a whole lot more. And the other thing is the utility. So you have different markets in the utility. You have the producers, you have the distribution, and then you have the electric utility, the people that are supplying electricity to your home. They got to buy that energy. And when they got to buy that energy on the spot market, they can pay up to $4 to $10 a kilowatt. We get upset when our bill goes to 30 cents a kilowatt. They're paying $4 and $10 a kilowatt for that energy for that 15 minutes that they needed it. If they're seeing the need, the value of having storage so that they don't have to pay $10 a kilowatt.
Yeah.
They store it. That regulates the frequency on the grid. Everybody's happier. Energy becomes cheaper. We don't burn as much fossil fuels. It's a big win all the way around.
Yeah, the sometimes I feel like the way we generate electricity at the utility scale traditionally with fossil fuels was just like it was a great solution at the time. It worked and it served everyone's needs, and the whole system was designed around the spinning reserves. And that's sometimes when people will talk about how renewables have a hard time communicating with the grid because it's looking for that a certain type of frequency.
Correct.
And so there's certain software out there that'll make the renewables look like it's spinning with reserves to the utility, right? So you
Yeah,
can use like so there's these solutions out there attempting to match these two things together, but it seems to me it's even a better solution to level up what we do at the utility level to reduce the need for this supply demand balancing and start using storage, make the energy and store it and then use it as it's needed.
that is absolutely the society solution level for energy.
Hmm.
We just need to be doing that. And then you can go use really good infrastructure, clean solar. Hey, there's clean nuclear out there. You get my point. We could have a more efficient, a smarter, grid, and honestly, less cost.
And that's what we're moving to, right? And
Hmm.
that's what interested me about the work that you're doing at your company, because like right now it's like lead acid and you have some flow battery solutions and you've got your lithium ion solutions with Tesla, and there's a couple other hodgepodge solutions, but nobody's really figured out the real sweet spot of the
That
storage,
balance.
that balance of all the different needs and attributes for a larger scale application. And so it really interests me what you all are up to, because you're kind of looking at it from a totally different perspective. And sometimes, they what was it? What is it? Einstein said you can't solve a problem with the same thought process that you use to create it. And I think,
Right.
when it comes to energy and storage, I feel like there's some advice that we can take from that statement. So when you look to the future, and you can, like, looking 10, 20 years out, what do you anticipate we're going to see in terms of stationary storage on this planet? What's your prediction?
My crystal ball's been broken for a long time. So, but if I could say what we need, and I can also say that with the storage solution, we're actually selling cost savings. My byproduct is a green energy, but I'm selling you a cheaper solution long term.
Yeah.
But so I think the future holds. I think finances drive humanity. Financial decisions are the easiest decisions to make. You want a frictionless choice. If I can get you green, make you more efficient, and save you money, you're going to be happy. So I believe that as we get the word out, and as we have a pretty robust manufacturing capability, and I believe that the world is going to move to storage in a big way, but the commercial scale, agriculture scale, and residential scale, and then ultimately at the utility, I think we're just going to see more and more and more of it. And because it's in big demand, we're going to see more development of it. I believe we'll get a lot of our product out there, but I think you'll see a lot more other companies also improving and getting more product out there. Storage is sort of here to stay,
Hmm.
and it really is a new concept.
Earthlings. I know that often when we think about stationary battery storage, we think about it in conjunction with renewable energy generation. Yet, Marty's showing us that just using batteries with a diesel generator allows that fuel to be used more efficiently. And, at 65% minimum savings on their fuel, this simple change has the ability to set these communities free and put them on a path to sustainability, both economically and environmentally. And, those savings, you can use that to purchase renewable energy generation, solar or wind turbines. And so, it really does put them in the right direction. Perhaps they'll never remove themselves from the diesel generators because honestly, when you're living in a harsh environment far from population centers, you need that redundancy. You want to know in the dead of winter, if your renewable energy generation goes down, you still have the diesel generator as backup. So I can understand that. So keep your sensors pointed at SuperCap Energy as they carry out these projects in Alaska. I'm definitely excited to see how they go. Now, this week, our faith in humanity is restored by a school in Assam, India, that doesn't accept money for tuition. Instead, the students must bring 25 plastic bottles filled with trash every week to pay for their education. Parmita Sharma and Mazin Mukhtar started the school in an effort to end two problems they saw in their community: illiteracy and trash. So this is how it works. The students bring the bottles to class, and then they're taught to read by the older students, which helps them learn these subjects better. And the school uses the plastic bottles to build structures and expand its facilities. I think it's brilliant. So we commend Parmita and Mazin for their innovative idea connecting several needs together in a system that enriches their community today and in the future. So this week, we encourage you to ponder how you could create a similar innovation in your own community as we all travel over 1,600 kilometers an hour on this beautiful blue-green space flower that we call home.